Stories number 1. IF29. Hate wearing rings and don't want to wear my engagement ring. My 30 fiancé is extremely hurt by this. Hate wearing rings and bracelets. They're always uncomfortable to me, and I can't wear one for longer than a day before it starts to seriously impact my mood. I became really annoyed at everything. Get angrier easier. I suspect I might have Asperger's or something, because this is not the only sensory issue I have. Everyone knows that I hate hand jewelry, including my fiancé. We've been dating for 3 years and he proposed a few months ago. When he proposed, he used a ring that's been passed down in his family, and IDK why I just kind of assumed it was more symbolic than anything else. Now though he's really upset, I don't want to wear it. I offered to wear it on a necklace, but since it's designed to be a ring, the stone scratches my skin and is still very uncomfortable. I have very sensitive skin, and by the end of the day there's a bunch of red scratches from where it irritated my skin. I told him that he knows that I can't wear rings or bracelets, but he said he thought I'd be able to put it aside for him. I really can't imagine wearing the ring for the rest of my life. I tried to wear it for him, but after a few days everyone was remarking that I was acting really aggressive and snapping at everyone. I just hate the feeling of wearing it so much. It's hard for me to enjoy anything with it on. My fiancé thinks this symbolizes that I don't want to be with him or something. We've been struggling to find a compromise because he wants me to at least have the ring on my body, because it's significant to him and his family, and also doesn't want to have it reworked so it's more comfortable as a necklace. He's really hurt I don't want to wear it, and even said it makes him think I don't want people to know I'm getting married. IDK what to do TLDR. I hate wearing rings. My fiancé wants me to wear the engagement ring, and we're struggling to find a compromise. Relevant comment. Commenter. 1. There are pendants for necklaces where you could put it in sort of a clear plastic container which can be round, square, etc. This would protect your skin and show off the ring. Might not look the best, but I guess this is the best option I can think of. Reply. Said this to him. He says it's just not the same. Update. We broke up. I brought up all the suggestions that the comments said. Get it reworked into a more comfortable necklace. Put it in a plastic container on a necklace so it wouldn't have to be reworked. Get a tattoo. All of it. He refused to hear it. The ring has been in his family for 4 generations and is extremely meaningful to him, so he did not want any compromise. He also didn't like that I would be married without a ring. He said it makes me look like I'm trying to hide the fact I'm going to be married, or that I have a fiancé, and insinuated that I was cheating on him, which really hurt my feelings. 2 days ago, I decided to try to wear the ring again to see if Explore therapy would work or something. It did not work at all. All day at work I was distracted and uptight because it was on, and by the time I got home, I felt extremely distressed and upset. When I got home that day, I was ready to just collapse on the couch, but my Sil and fiancé were home. I was not expecting my Sil to be there. Apparently, it's tradition to throw a surprise party for engaged couples in my fiancé's family. The bride is taken out to get her nails done with the women of the family, get beautified or something, and then meets the groom and the rest of the family at a random family member's house for a party. I hate surprises and I hate parties. I asked my fiancé why he didn't warn me, and he just said he didn't want to ruin the surprise. My Sil knew that I didn't like shopping, and so she had already gotten me a dress to change into for the event after we got our nails done. It was a very sweet and thoughtful thing to do, but it was covered in sequins and had beads hanging from the bottom, which I already knew would make my sensory issues go crazy. My fiancé must have seen my face when I saw it, because he texted me that he would be really upset if I disrespected his sister by not wearing the dress. By the time I got to the party, I felt like a robot from how much I was shutting down. I still had the ring on too, along with the dress, so I was just doing everything in my power to not start crying or have some sort of freak out. A couple hours pass, and I'm still feeling terrible, and then his cousin grabs my waist from behind to move me out of the way. I hate being touched so much. I hate it. I can hardly stand it on a good day. I screamed, and I just couldn't stop screaming and crying. His entire family just watched me shocked. My fiancé pulled outside and into the car and drove me home and was yelling at me the whole time, which made it worse. The next morning he demanded an apology. I was so tired and exhausted and I just thought, what am I doing this for? Is this who I want to spend my life with? So I dumped him. The apartment is under my name, so he's staying with family, right? Now, I feel so light and free for the first time in forever. And now I don't have to wear his stupid ring. TLDR. My sensory issues caused me to dump my fiancé. Relevant comment. Commenter. 1. My wife and I both have wedding rings but hate wearing them for extended periods of time, so they just sit in a drawer at home. It's just such a non-issue for us. Getting touched by random people and then being asked to apologize for the reaction is just ludicrous. I'm glad you broke up with the douche. Just out of curiosity, do you have touch issues with your partner? S. Lack of touch would be a big issue for most people. Reply, I should clarify. I like being touched in specific circumstances. For example, I like being touched by someone who I find attractive. I'm aware ahead of time there will be touch, and I'm able to see it happening. Outside of those circumstances, it feels like being zapped. Not fun. Commenter 2. Just curious, what did you love about this guy? All I see is all the things you hate. Reply. We both are art nerds and we always bonded over how much we love art. I always thought he was really thoughtful and intelligent with the way he would analyze not just art pieces but everything around him. I loved hearing his opinions about stuff, and I always felt like I could learn new stuff from him too because he's an art curator, so he's just super knowledgeable. He was fun to talk to. I don't know what really changed. Over time he just got more and more demanding, I guess. I'm going to miss what we had. When asked if there's anything OP doesn't hate. I love history, cats, paintings. My ex-fiancé was a museum curator. We got together because we would spend hours together in art museums talking about the use of color and lighting in different paintings. We hadn't done that in a while actually, which always made me really sad. I know myself. I know the stuff I like and dislike, just because someone else likes surprises and loud parties and I doesn't say anything about my or the hypothetical party lover's personality or inherent. Goodness, I just was tired of trying to be something I wasn't. Edit. There are way more people commenting than I was expecting. In case you didn't read the original post, I most likely have Asperger's. I didn't mention it, but I have already been taking steps to get my diagnosis. Please stop berating me for not being able to handle normal basic social interactions. It's literally a symptom of autism to not be able to handle that stuff, guys. Stories number 2. My DM let me know half the party has a problem with me. We are a party of 7 with 2 co-DMs. I am the most experienced player of the group. 2 are playing for the first time, and I'm very much into the RP and watching D&D content for ideas that I bring to the DMs. Only 2 of our group actually wrote backstories myself, and 1 other. 3 used AI, and 2 didn't write one. All that to say, the DMs have created a story that has had some situations that focus on my character, but they have balanced those with ones for other characters. As a player, I try to encourage communication and participation by all the characters, but a lot of times only get blank stares. My character is fairly wise and extremely charismatic, and often steps up to speak for the party. My character is not very strong in combat, and I often struggle with that, but 3 of the players are very physical characters who absolutely love combat. Today one of the DMs told me that one player is talking about leaving the group he works and misses at least 25% of sessions, but his excuse is that I take over, and the campaign is about my character. It's not at all. The mission is to find the cure for a demonic disease, which one of the characters caught. Apparently 2 others in the group are backing him and saying I'm a problem. The DMs are trying not to pick sides, but have said they wished everyone was as invested as I am and played like I do. We meet again tomorrow, and the DM called me to let me know about this situation so I wouldn't be blindsided by it because there is going to be a discussion. I told the DM that if I'm not wanted, I'll step out, but he assured me the DMs want me there. I suggested that I could step away and not play a couple of sessions and see how it goes. I'm the main healer of the group, so they'd probably have a TPK editor's note. Total party kill. Any thoughts on this situation? I feel like I'm being targeted because other players resent me for playing well. TLDR. My character speaks for the group a lot because no one else speaks up. And now 3 to 7 of the group have a problem with me. Comments. Commenter 1. 3 out of 8 have a problem with you. That means 5 of them are okay with you. Give them a session where you take a back seat. Let them do their own persuasion roles, or at least pause to give them the chance to suggest it. Just see how it goes for one session. I wouldn't sit out completely, but maybe you help them evolve as players and the space is left open once in a while, and everyone ends up having a better game in the long run. Reply, I've been contemplating asking the DMs to cause my character to lose their voice so I can't contribute for a bit. Also, 3-7, Commenter 2, I would shy away from this. The common refrain is that in-game solutions won't solve out-of-game problems. Any in-game solution like losing your voice could be perceived as making the game more about you and hurt your relations more. Have the talk with the group, see what their specific concerns are, and try to come up with some actionable feedback. If they're vague about their grievances, that won't help anyone, so hopefully they can give you specific things to work on. If none of this works, you, the DMs, and the rest of the group will need to decide how to proceed, and I'd say you should be prepared for that outcome. My guess is that their grievances are more personal, emotional, than about specific things you're doing in-game. It's hard to change someone's impression of you, but I wish you good luck. Commenter 3. Without us having watched your guys play, I'm not sure any of us are in a position to know if you are a bit overbearing, or they are being unreasonable. Quick thought though. Could this actually be a play style issue? Are they really just wanting to press skip through all the conversations and get to the next fight, dungeon crawl, and seeing that as the point of the game? And your engagement is an issue in their eyes, not because it gives them less time to role-play, but because it extends time between battles? That would kind of fit with the kind of player not interested in having a backstory, etc. Reply, this might be it. Where my character would prefer to RP talk us out of fighting if possible. These guys just want to smash. Update, just got home from our session, and I think it went well. Our DMs went into this almost like a session 0. Everyone around the table said what they liked and didn't about play so far. I think there's a big disconnect within our group between some of the players who have only experienced fantasy through video games versus those who have played D&D. Before in that there are 3 the ones that told the DMs they had a problem with me, who are very battle-focused and not into the RP aspects, and don't really feel comfortable RPing, even during battles. They were all also frustrated by both the time not in combat and the time between turns in combat. The DMs explained their side of things, about how the RP is a huge part of the storytelling and the characters are the driving force behind what happens, especially in a homebrew like this one. And addressing the time between rounds, we all discussed trying to make sure everyone is engaged and paying attention so as not to take a long time to make our moves. Cross-chat was another issue brought up, as it is distracting, and since one of our DMs has ADHD, he gets distracted very easily his words. The size of the group was brought up, and the DMs acknowledged that it was challenging, but they loved everyone in the group and would hate to lose anyone. When it came to my turn, I explained that I loved the RP, and it made sense from a stats standpoint for me to talk, but I needed more input from the group if I was speaking for the group. If anyone else wanted to talk, to have at it, and I would gladly step back. I couched it as a bit of a plea for help to avoid burnout. Of the other 3 players, the ones who didn't have a problem with me, one absolutely adores combat because he's a warcaster and loves doing damage. One loves the RP, she's the other more involved player during RP. And the last said she enjoys watching the RP but isn't ready to really get into it. This is her first campaign. And she's a fairly quiet person, but I've seen her be feisty IRL, so I know she has it in her. All in all, I think it was productive, and I think the DMs did a good job making sure everyone was heard. No one specifically called me out. I asked for help in managing NPCs, speaking for the group, and aggravations were addressed, and the DMs got some input for improving the game. We did a very short session afterward, our characters sitting around a campfire and discussing their backstories, which was great. It was like pulling teeth for one of the characters, but with a lot of DM coaxing, he came to some conclusions about his character, figured out some motivations. I only spoke to ask questions except for one comment about my character that related to another character. Didn't go into my story at all, which was fine by me. My character is a bit secretive anyway, so it checks out. 2 characters sustained damage, the barbarian reached into the fire, and another character was teleported away by an arcane debt collector, beaten, and returned, which I healed without fanfare. Thanks to those who gave good advice. I will try to shut up and wait for others to speak up, no matter how long it takes. Comments. Commenter. I love how this sub is always talking about how communication is key, and this is a prime example. Stories number 3. 17 men was kicked out and have been sleeping at my girlfriend's 17F house. Thank you to everyone who shared their advice. I appreciate you all. I decided to talk to my dad in the presence of my girlfriend's mom. After we all talked for a long time, we decided that I am going to stay at my girlfriend's until we graduate. My dad is remorseful, but I told him we can repair our relationship with me elsewhere. I'm going to try and see him once a week if school and work isn't too busy. For those who are concerned with the legality of it, my parents and my girlfriend's mom are signing a consent form saying they all agree I can stay there for at least the next 380 days. My dad apologized a lot and I want a relationship with him, and I told him that, but I'm going to stay where I feel the safest as I finish school. As far as my girlfriend and I sleeping in the same bed, her and I decided it would be best if we don't, to avoid any slip-ups. We are taking my mattress from my dad's house and putting in my girlfriend's home office so I can sleep in there and not the couch. So now luckily I will have privacy for some stuff, lol. And most importantly, I won't be trapped on the couch. Some were worried about my back. I'm going back to the doctor's on Monday to make sure it is the couch and not the accident. And luckily my parents and my girlfriend's mom worked something out monetarily as well so I can save my money from work for the future. I don't know how much or how frequently my parents will give her anything, but she said not to worry about buying my own food or giving her anything anymore. She even felt bad for taking money in the first place and actually gave it back. She still expects me to help around the house, of course, which I have no issue with. So that's where we are at. Baby steps with my dad, living at my girlfriend's house until we finish school. Let me know if you have any more questions. So my girlfriend and I have been together since we were 14, and a month ago my parents kicked me out because I wrecked my dad's truck. The accident wasn't my fault. Another truck ran a red light, but he blames me. I slept in my car for about a week until my girlfriend found out and told her mom. Her mom called me and told me to sleep at their house until everything blows over and I go back home. I was very appreciative and accepted. I told her that I would buy all of my food, help around the house, and with what money I have left over after food and gas and insurance, I'd give to her for the increase in any bills because of me staying there. It's been 3 weeks now. I've been sleeping in the couch, of course. My back really hurts, but that's okay. I don't really want to go back home, but my dad texted me and said he wanted to talk whenever I'm ready. I told my girlfriend and her mom that, and I told my girlfriend that I don't really want to go back, and I guess she told her mom because her mom told me I could stay with them until we graduate, which would be in May. I don't want to go back home. It isn't an abusive home by any means. I lived a good life, but the fact my dad was more concerned with his truck than me rubs me the wrong way. But then I would feel guilty taking this offer, and since school started, I had to cut my hours back at work, which means I'm giving her mom less money. Though if I do stay, her mom said it would be okay if we slept in the same bed because she can't imagine what that couch has done to my back. She's made it very clear from the start, if there's one slip up, I'm gone. Which is fair, and I'm not worried about that. Do I stay? Talk to my dad? What? Stories number 4. My boss made me leave a work note at a grave. 3 weeks ago, one of my co-workers lost a relative. She has been off work on bereavement and family leave. Our boss isn't happy with her being off for so long, since it is out of his control and he doesn't get to approve or deny her leave. In this case, the HR department is in charge of that. I have been doing my best to ignore him whenever he complains. Last week, my boss gave me an envelope with my co-worker's name on it and told me to leave it at the grave of my co-worker's relative. He said it was a condolence card at first, but I didn't buy it because our work had already sent a card. When I asked him about it again, he said it was a note with some work-related items only she knows about, and he needs answers ASAP, and she won't answer her personal, not work phone when he calls her. He gave me directions to the cemetery and everything. Allison, I hope you don't judge me for this, but I did what he said and brought the envelope to the grave. I don't know if she has seen it yet. I am horrified and disgusted with this. I am disgusted with myself. My boss threatened my job if I didn't, but it's still no excuse. I don't even have a year of work experience, not counting internships in college. I was scared of being fired, and so I did it. But now I'm disgusted with myself, and I don't know what I should do about this. I imagine telling my boss off or telling his boss, but I'm scared to actually do it. I wish I had never delivered the letter, but I don't know what to do next. Any help or tips you or your readers have for me would be so helpful. First update. I went back to the cemetery because I felt so bad, but the note wasn't there, and I felt sick to my stomach after that. I was hoping the gardener or someone from the cemetery cleared it away, but either my co-worker or someone in her family found it. I was going to tell HR, but I didn't get a chance because it was found first. My co-worker was so mad. She emailed other people at work to tell them what happened and came into the HR office, even though she was still on leave, and made a scene. She left in tears. The note was clearly from our boss, but he denied leaving it there and said I delivered it. He had emailed me about going to deliver something, and I said okay. But nowhere in the email did it say what the note was. He only told me when I went to get it from him. He denied threatening my job, and the HR department was angry at me for delivering the note to the grave instead of bringing it to them and telling them what happened. I never confronted him either or told HR about it. I was going to, but my coworker went to them first. Someone else we work with? I don't know who told my coworker it was me who delivered it. She sent me an email saying I'm a horrible person. There were no threats in it and has been no other contact from her, so there is nothing I can do about the email. She sent our boss a similar email. Besides telling people at work, she called a few of our clients and told them too. There was so much backlash from both my coworkers and the clients. I was fired along with our boss. No one from HR or any of my coworkers supported me, and they blamed me as much as my boss. I couldn't get unemployment because I had not worked for a full 12 months, and also because I was fired for misconduct. I have been looking for a new job, but I haven't found anything yet. I have been temping in a field that is related to the field my old job was in, but is separate enough I feel I can make a new start. The field is also relevant to my degree. I am planning on leaving my old job off my resume after what happened, and because I was there for less than a year. Even though this was my first job ever, I did an internship each summer when I was in college, and between those and temping I'm hoping it's enough experience to find a job. Given how the economy and job market is, I am hoping it won't look strange for someone to have not found a full-time job a year after they graduated. I don't want to go back to the same field because my coworker told so many people, from inside and outside of the company, and every single person supported her and blamed me and our boss. 1. I still live at home and feel fortunate that my parents have said I can stay until I can afford to live on my own. I regret what I did, and I'm still upset with myself over my actions. I wish I had not been fired, but I realize there is nothing I can do about it no matter how I feel. I hope to make a new start in a new field. Last update. I saw your post where you called for updates on past letters. I don't have anything exciting to add or let you know about. I haven't found a permanent job yet. On the upside, I have been temping and working contract jobs, which has given me tons of experience and new skills in the related industry I hope to find work in. I figure it is only a matter of time before I find a permanent job. I need to keep looking. I am sure all of your posts on Ask a Manager will help in that regard. I am appreciative of the supportive words from you and in all the comments. Although my parents and other family and friends have been nothing but supportive and good to me, they all agree that I should have gone to HR right away and not delivered the note. But no one has said anything negative, or I deserve to be fired or anything like that. Thank you again. Stories number 5. I'm concerned about the lack of respect shown by high school seniors in a college setting. I'm 24 years old and attending community college in my area. The college allows high school juniors and seniors to attend in person and get college credits. I'm astounded and very concerned by the behavior of these high school students. This sounds overdramatic, but hear me out. For some context, I'm taking an art class, which is a requirement for most degrees. Most people in the class, which spans from 17-year-old high schoolers to 20, 40, and even 60-year-olds, do not want to take the class. Most of us find it boring and are only fulfilling a requirement. so it can be annoying sometimes as it's a 3-hour class, but that's life. Our professor is a wonderful artist in her 70s, who is energetic, passionate, and so kind. She is a little eccentric, but I think that's almost a requirement for being an art teacher. Every class so far, the group of high schoolers that sit together make awful comments about the professor. Within earshot of her, they do not whisper. They speak at normal volume and complain the whole entire period. This is not 1 or 2 of them, it's a group of about 10 of them. Today they kept saying, "I just want to leave. This class is so stupid. This is so boring. And she's fucking weird about the professor." This was all while she was within earshot. Throughout the class, the professor got visibly sad and discouraged. When she tried to give the students constructive feedback on their artwork and methods, they rolled their eyes right in her face and said things like, "Whatever," and "Okay, yeah," in the most snarky and disrespectful way you can imagine. The same students then walked out of the class 45 minutes early to get out of helping to clean up after a messy project. I know high schoolers are immature, but I was appalled at this. They are 17 and 18-year-olds about to enter college settings and the workforce. I can't imagine they will get very far with the blatant disrespect they show. Me and the older students in the class couldn't believe what we were seeing. None of us would even dream of acting like that in a college course. We stayed after class to chat with the professor and kind of apologize on their behalf. We gave her positive feedback on the class so far and basically said, "Ignore them, they're immature." The professor was basically in tears by the end of the class today. How are these people going to hold jobs, go to college, and function in society? I'm only like 6 years older than them, but the difference in awareness and behavior seems larger than it should be. I never would have acted like that when I was 18 or 17 or 16, or any age really. Stories number 6. Aita. For not wanting my daughter's party turned into a pregnancy announcement? My BL30M has lived with my husband and I on and off for close to 8 years. Shh. Even when my husband and I had kids, he lived with us. Last year, he got serious about finding a serious relationship. I was happy for him when he found someone in November. He moved into her house in December. In April, they found out BIL's girlfriend is pregnant. She's due in January. She told her family right away and left it up to BIL to tell his. He chose to be a coward and say nothing. Well, tomorrow my daughter is turning 2, and BIL has decided that is when he'll tell everyone. Mostly because when they show up, his girlfriend is very obviously pregnant. I'm kind of livid. If IL is known to fly off the handle for things, our son ate a goldfish cracker off our floor, and Fael had a fit about how disgusting that was, made a scene, and stormed out of a get-together. He's also told my husband that he needs to watch himself because apparently I'm not the right kind of woman. Back to the party. I don't want this announcement to happen because if Fael flies off the handle, my daughter's party is ruined. Even if he doesn't, it's suddenly going to be a pregnancy gender reveal, and no one is going to remember why they're actually there. I know my daughter won't remember it, but I will. My husband thinks it's not a big deal and he's excited. I've tried to communicate my anxiety about it, but he says his dad will be fine. I told him the only way this is happening is if his brother goes to their parents' house well before the party and tells them. Otherwise, I'll be kicking people out. He scoffed but said okay. Now I'm just really conflicted. Update. Aita for not wanting my daughter's party turned into a pregnancy announcement? Well, if anyone smelled smoke today, it was probably the dumpster fire that was my daughter's party. Firstly, Fael actually seemed to take the news pretty well. Surprisingly, Mill was more angry that he waited so long to tell them. No scene was made. However, every conversation from that point forward was all about the baby and pregnancy and how girlfriend told her parents, "Is there a name yet?" etc. Mill made a comment about how my husband and I can now give Bill and girlfriend all the baby stuff we're not using anymore. As an added bonus, Bill also decided to use this opportunity to tell everyone him and his girlfriend are engaged, and they're planning a big move to relocate closer to her family and I guess us before she's due. So on top of the baby questions, there was also conversations about wedding planning and house hunting. As another addition, my sister and her daughter came. Except my niece has an active staph infection and has been on antibiotics for 24 hours. But this wasn't mentioned to us until the party was almost over. It was assumed to not be a big deal because all open wounds were covered and She'd had 24 hours of antibiotics. My husband was furious and pulled me to the side to say some not nice things about it. After that, I shut down. I isolated myself, putting together my daughter's new toys. Everyone left pretty early and everyone was feeling tense. I'm feeling upset and defeated, and now I have to monitor my 3 young kids for signs of a staph infection and try to sanitize my house. I think I'm done having parties for a while. Stories number 7. I blocked my wife after she wouldn't stop calling me at work. I don't even know where to start, but I guess the beginning of last night makes the most sense. I work nights, 12-hour shifts, and my job is the kind where a single moment of distraction can have real consequences for the people around me. I manage a small crew, and if I mess up, someone can get seriously hurt. I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and while it's stressful, I usually handle it fine. But yesterday tested me in a way I've never dealt with before. I had just woken up from a short nap before heading out. I was still groggy, still trying to clear the fog from my head, when my wife texted me saying she wasn't doing well and needed to talk. She's 25, I'm 27, and we've been together for 9 years. When she says she's struggling, I answer, "That's how it's always been." So I called her right away, even though I only had a little time to eat, get dressed, and mentally prepare for my shift. At first, she just talked about how lonely she felt while I was gone, how she didn't feel connected to me, how she worried I didn't care about her anymore. I listened, tried to validate, tried to reassure. I told her I loved her and wanted us to work through things. But then I said something I don't normally say. I admitted that while I take responsibility for a lot of our issues, I can't carry all of it. I told her we both need to work on our relationship, not just me. The line went silent. Then she got angry. She told me I was making it her fault, that I was twisting things, that I didn't care about her pain. I said I was hurt that she wouldn't even listen to my side, and the next thing I knew, she hung up on me. What followed was 2 hours of non-stop calls and texts. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Every 30 seconds it was either a call or a message. "Answer me. You're hurting me. If you really loved me, you'd pick up. You can't. Just leave me like this." It didn't matter that I told her I needed space. It didn't matter that I explained I had to get my head straight for work. She just kept going. I tried to ignore it, but then she started calling my work phone. That's a number she's never touched before. It's supposed to be for emergencies and communication with my crew. Seeing her name flash across that line over and over again made my chest tight with panic. I knew if I picked up once, it wouldn't stop. Finally, I did something I've never done before. I blocked her on both phones. I had to. My team's safety was on the line. When I finished my shift and unblocked her, my phone exploded with notifications. Dozens of missed calls, pages of messages. She'd even looped in her mom and one of her friends, both of them sending me guilt-trippy messages about how I couldn't just abandon her when she needed me most. When I finally called, she was sobbing and furious. She told me I was cruel, controlling, abusive, that I was teaching her a lesson by cutting her off. She said I made her feel worthless, like I didn't care whether she lived or died. And when I tried to explain that I was only trying to protect my ability to focus, she cut me off again. She repeated over and over, "You abandoned me. You abandoned me." Then she said if I didn't start answering her, she would show up at my job. That one broke me. Because if she really did that, she'd put herself and my crew at risk. I can't be the guy running heavy equipment and worrying if his wife is going to walk through the door mid-shift. The truth is, this isn't new. Emily and I have always had a rocky relationship. Both of us came from broken homes. Both of us carried scars into our marriage. My mom was a narcissist who tore me down every chance she got. I cut her off years ago, but the damage lingers. I've been in therapy for 5 years trying to undo the patterns she drilled into me, mainly being the scapegoat, the people pleaser, the one who takes blame just to keep the peace. And I'll admit, for most of our relationship, that's what I did with my wife. If she was upset, I took the blame. If she was lonely, I dropped everything to soothe her, even if it meant erasing myself in the process. But a few months ago, I got a new boss who's basically my mom all over again, demanding, belittling, manipulative. At first it wrecked me, but therapy forced me to start building boundaries. I realized if I wanted to survive, I had to stop being the guy who fawns and says yes to everything. I had to start saying no. And once I learned to do that at work, I couldn't stop doing it at home. Emily hasn't handled that shift well. The moment I stopped apologizing for existing, it was like I broke the unspoken rules of our relationship. Yesterday was just the worst example yet. I told her I couldn't take responsibility for everything, and she responded by blowing up my phone until I couldn't function. I arranged coverage for a couple of days and took time off because I knew I couldn't safely lead my team with my head spinning like this. But even with that space, I don't know what to do next. On one hand, I love my wife and I don't want her to feel abandoned. I know her childhood trauma. I know her triggers. I know how desperately she clings when she's scared. But on the other hand, I can't set myself on fire just to keep her warm. I can't put her needs above the literal safety of my crew. I've never felt more torn. Part of me thinks blocking her was the only reasonable choice. Part of me feels like a monster for doing it. And part of me wonders if this is just the start of realizing our marriage may not survive the boundaries I've finally started building. All I know is I can't keep living like this. Update: I blocked my wife after she wouldn't stop calling me at work. It's been about 3 weeks since I originally posted, and a lot has happened since then. I wanted to come back and give an update because so many of you gave me thoughtful advice, and honestly, some of the comments hit me harder than therapy sessions I've had in the past. I read everything, even if I didn't respond, and it really made me step back and think. After I arranged for those 2 days off, I drove home instead of staying in the crew housing. I didn't tell Emily I was coming because I needed to walk into my own house on my own terms, not to the sound of my phone buzzing nonstop. When I got there, she was waiting. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept since we fought. The house was messy, dishes piled up, and she had clearly been spiraling. The second she saw me, she burst into tears and hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. She said, "I knew you'd come back. I knew you couldn't just leave me." It was this weird mix of relief and fear, because while part of me was glad she was calmer, another part of me realized she still didn't understand why I blocked her. To her, it wasn't about my safety or boundaries. It was about whether or not I loved her enough to prove it. That night, we had one of the hardest conversations of our marriage. I told her straight up, "If you ever call my work phone again, I will file it with HR, and you will not like the consequences." That shocked her. She said she never thought it was a big deal, that she just needed me. I told her it was a big deal, that I was responsible for people's lives, and that her constant calls could have gotten someone hurt. She cried again, told me I was cruel, and said, "You sound just like your mother." That hit me like a freight train. Because she knows my history, she knows how hard I've worked to not be like my mom and to get out from under her shadow. To weaponize that in the middle of an argument, it broke something in me. But I didn't explode. I just sat there and said, "Emily, I love you. But if you keep crossing my boundaries, you're going to lose me. I can't do this anymore." The next couple of days were a roller coaster. She apologized one moment, then accused me of emotional abuse the next. She said I was gaslighting her by saying I needed space, because in her mind, space equals abandonment. I kept repeating the same thing. Space is not rejection. Blocking you wasn't punishment. It was survival. After hearing that 100 times, she finally agreed to call her therapist. She hasn't seen hers in almost a year, but she made an appointment and I think that's a step forward. Meanwhile, I doubled down in my own therapy. I told my therapist everything, and she actually commended me for blocking Emily when I had to. She said it was one of the first truly healthy boundaries I've ever enforced without immediately caving out of guilt. That was a huge wake-up call, realizing that I don't have to carry every ounce of responsibility for Emily's emotions. One big decision I made. I'm not going to hide behind text messages anymore. When I went back to my shift, I told Emily that we needed to have a plan. If she feels like she's spiraling, she can send me one message that says, "I need to talk." If I'm able, I'll call. If I'm not, she has to call someone else, her mom, her therapist, even a hotline, before bombarding me. And if she doesn't respect that, I will block her again. She didn't like that plan at first. She said it felt like an ultimatum. I told her it was, but not because I want to control her. It's because I need to protect myself and the people around me. Here's the thing. I don't know if this marriage is going to last. For years, I carried both of us. I bent over backwards, smoothed every rough edge, swallowed every frustration just to keep the peace. Now that I've stopped doing that, Emily feels like I've changed into someone cold and uncaring. But I'm not cold. I'm finally protecting myself. It's complicated, though. When things are good, they're really good. She's funny, supportive, and when she's not in a spiral, she's genuinely one of the most caring people I know. But when she panics, it's like a switch flips. She'll burn everything down just to make sure I'm paying attention. And I don't know if I can live the rest of my life in that cycle. Right now, I'm taking it day by day. We're both in therapy. I'm focusing on work, my crew, and staying grounded. She's focusing on her sessions and hopefully learning better coping strategies. But deep down, I'm preparing myself for the possibility that love won't be enough to fix this. That, maybe the healthiest thing for both of us would be to walk away. I don't have the answer yet. But I do know this. Blocking her that night wasn't wrong. It may have been the first time I actually stood up for myself in our marriage. And while it's terrifying, it also feels like the first step toward finally living authentically, whether that ends up being with her or without her. Final update, I blocked my wife after she wouldn't stop calling me at work. It's been a little over 4 months since my last update, and I think I can finally call this the end of the road. After that last post, Emily and I tried. Really, we did. She started therapy again, and I stuck with mine. We made a communication plan. We agreed to boundaries, and for a while it actually felt like progress. There were a couple of good weeks where she seemed lighter, calmer, even hopeful. I wanted so badly to believe that things were changing for the better, but the pattern came back. About 6 weeks ago, I was midway through a 12-hour night shift when my phone buzzed during a critical operation. It was Emily. At first, I ignored it, thinking, she knows the plan. She'll wait. But within minutes, the calls and texts started flooding in. Answer me. I know you're awake. If you don't love me, just say so. It escalated quickly. I had 47 missed calls by the time I stepped outside for a break. When I finally answered, she was sobbing and yelling at me, accusing me of cheating, saying she knew I was with someone else because I didn't answer right away. I was stunned. There's never been anyone else. I barely have time for my own life outside of work, let alone an affair. But in that moment, I realized nothing I said could convince her otherwise. The next morning, I blocked her again, and this time, I didn't unblock her when I got off shift. That week, I packed a bag and stayed in a motel instead of going straight home. I needed space to think. I met with my therapist and laid everything out. Every call, every fight, every time I'd given in just to keep peace. And for the first time, I said the words out loud. I don't think I want to be married anymore. It gutted me. 9 years together, all those memories, all the effort I put into making it work. But I couldn't ignore what my gut had been screaming for months. Love wasn't enough. When I finally went home, Emily was waiting for me again. But this time she was furious, not tearful. She accused me of abandoning her, of being just like every other man who leaves when it gets hard. I told her quietly that I wasn't leaving because things were hard. I was leaving because things were unsafe. Not physically, but emotionally. My job requires focus. My life requires balance. And she refused to respect the boundaries I needed to keep both. I told her I wanted a separation. She screamed, threw a glass at the wall, and locked herself in the bedroom. I ended up sleeping on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling, wondering how it had all come to this. The next day, I called a lawyer. 2 weeks later, I filed for divorce. Emily's reaction has been a whirlwind, begging 1 minute, lashing out the next. She told her mom and friends that I was abusive, controlling, even narcissistic. Some of them sent me nasty messages, but I didn't respond. For the first time in my life, I'm not trying to fix everyone's perception of me. I know my truth, and that's enough. I'm renting a small apartment near my job site now. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine, and it's quiet. I've been going on hikes again, reconnecting with a couple of old friends, And even just sitting in silence without my phone buzzing feels like a luxury. Therapy has become less about survival and more about rebuilding who I am outside of this marriage. I don't hate Emily. I don't even blame her entirely. We both came from broken families. We both carried baggage. And for years we enabled each other's worst patterns. But I can't keep sacrificing my peace, my job, and my sense of self just to keep her calm. That's not love, it's codependency. So, the final answer, blocking her wasn't cruel. It was the beginning of saving myself. And while it ended in divorce, I don't regret finally drawing that line. For the first time in years, I feel like I can breathe. Stories number 8. Married with children, thinking of separating over politics. I never thought I'd be sitting here typing this out, but here I am. I'm 44, my husband is 45, and we've been married for over 20 years. We've built what I thought was a solid life together. 2 kids, a family-owned business, a comfortable home, and a future we worked our butts off for. Through all the financial struggles, parenting challenges, health scares, and the general chaos of life, I always believed we were a team. We may not have always been the most affectionate couple, but we functioned. We got things done. We held each other up when times got rough. And now, it feels like all of it might be unraveling because we can't talk about politics without it turning into an explosion. The last 2 weeks have been hell. We've had 2 massive blowouts, both sparked by political disagreements. And it's not just a normal fight where we cool down and apologize later. Both times, my husband has insinuated that maybe this marriage is over. One time he said, maybe this is a sign it's not working anymore. And the most recent fight, he told me not to come home. He walked it back later. But those words are out there now. Once words like that are spoken, you can't just forget them. What's killing me is that it's not like our lives revolve around politics. We don't work in politics. We don't have political jobs. It's not even something we used to talk about much. But in the last few years, it's crept into everything. I think we're both carrying around so much tension from the world, from the media, from the arguments online, that when it bubbles up between us, it feels radioactive. For example, one fight started because I showed him that birthday card Donald Trump wrote to Jeffrey Epstein. I thought it was interesting, even damning, and I showed it to him almost casually. He snapped immediately, accused me of baiting him, and said I was deliberately sabotaging our agreement not to bring up politics. I didn't see it as political. I saw it as factual, as newsworthy, but I guess to him, it was me poking the bear. That fight spiraled until we weren't even talking about the card anymore. We were yelling about who disrespects who more, who undermines the other more, who listens and who doesn't. It got ugly. Another fight started because, out of nowhere, he brought up DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Why? I don't even know. Maybe something at work. Maybe something he read. I don't know. But the second he said it, I felt myself heating up. I knew I was about to get emotional. I tried to walk away, literally said, I need to step back before this turns into a fight. He accused me of always needing the last word and said I was walking away just to win. That wasn't my intention at all. I was trying to de-escalate. But to him it looked like an insult, like I was dismissing him. That turned into another blowout, and here's the heart of it. We disagree on Trump. We disagree on DEI. We disagree on basically anything MAGA-related. I'm not someone who can stomach Trump's nonsense. I grew up with a strong feminist mother, and I've always been pretty progressive. My husband, on the other hand, has drifted further and further right as he's gotten older. He's not waving a flag at rallies, but he defends Trump constantly, rails against DEI programs, and grumbles about cancel culture. He insists it's about logic and facts, but from my perspective, it feels like he's been sucked into a conservative echo chamber. And the part that terrifies me is what this means for our kids. Our daughter is 13. She's smart, curious, and already thinking critically about the world. She's asked me questions about feminism, about Roe v. Wade, about LGBTQ rights. I don't want her to ever think that by staying silent, I'm complicit in ideas that go against her autonomy as a woman. I want her to know she has a mom who will stand up for her, who will show her that she deserves equality and respect. But I also don't want her to grow up in a broken home. My own parents divorced when I was a kid, and it devastated me. It colored my entire adolescence, made me feel unstable, and left scars I still carry. I swore I wouldn't do that to my children. Then there's our son. He's 10. He adores his dad. He mimics him, follows him around, wants to be just like him. If we stay together, my husband will always have influence. If we separate, he'll still have influence. But I find myself lying awake at night, worrying about raising a boy who absorbs these rigid, MAGA-influenced ideas uncritically. I don't want him to grow up thinking misogyny is okay, or that empathy is weakness, or that Trump is some kind of hero. But how do I fight that influence without turning into the bad guy mom who's always contradicting dad? That's where I feel trapped. I don't want divorce. I don't want to blow up our family. But I also don't know how to keep living like this. Every conversation feels like walking through a minefield. If I say the wrong word, if I bring up the wrong headline, if I don't react the way he wants, boom. We're back at square one, screaming, or worse, saying things like, "Don't come home." Tonight, I packed an overnight bag and booked a cheap hotel. I told him I needed space. He didn't fight me on it, which might be its own sign. As I sit here in this bland little room, I'm realizing I need more than space. I need clarity. I've already looked up couples, therapists in our area. I know he's skeptical. He's always said therapy is just paying someone to tell you what you already know. But I don't see any other option. If we don't get a neutral third party to help us communicate, we're going to implode. And here's the part I'm scared to admit. Even anonymously, part of me is wondering if therapy will even help. What if the truth is that we've just grown apart? That after 20 years, raising kids, building businesses, surviving all the ups and downs, we're not the same people we were when we met? What if politics is just the surface symptom, and underneath it we've been drifting in different directions for years? I don't want that to be true. I want to believe this is fixable. I want to believe we can come back to being partners, to being a team. But I also can't unhear the words, "Don't come home." I can't unfeel the way my stomach drops every time he defends things I find indefensible. So, yeah, that's where I'm at. I'm in a hotel room, trying to keep myself from crying too loudly so the people next door don't hear. I'm wondering how many other people are out there fighting this same battle. Two people who love each other, who've built a life together, but who are being torn apart by the toxic, divisive politics of our country. If anyone reading this has been through something similar, I'd love to hear how you navigated it, because right now, I'm staring at 20 years of marriage, 2 amazing kids, and a future I thought I could count on, and all I see is smoke. Update. I didn't expect to be back here so soon, but I guess writing helps me sort through everything. A lot has happened since I first wrote, and while some of it feels like progress, other parts feel like cracks, widening in slow motion. The night I checked into the hotel, I barely slept. I kept scrolling through old photos on my phone, vacations, birthday parties, our wedding, our first house, and it felt surreal that the same man in those pictures is the same one. Who told me not to come home? It hit me like a brick that maybe I've been in denial for longer than I thought. The next morning, my phone was full of texts from him. The first was defensive. "If you're trying to punish me, it's not going to work." Then it shifted into guilt-tripping. "The kids are asking where you are. What do I tell them?" Then finally, something softer. "I don't want this to end. Please come home." I didn't respond right away. I needed space to think, and I didn't want to be manipulated back into the same cycle. Around noon, I texted back that I'd come home that evening, but that I wanted to talk first, away from the kids. He agreed. When I got home, the kids were buzzing with questions. "Mom, where were you? Why'd you sleep at a hotel?" I dodged as best I could, told them I needed a little break because I'd been stressed. They seemed satisfied, but I know kids pick up more than we realize. Later, after they went to bed, my husband and I sat in the living room. No TV, no phones, just us. At first it was awkward silence. Then I told him straight up, "I can't keep living like this. If every disagreement leads to you threatening divorce or telling me not to come home, then you're not just hurting me, you're hurting the kids. You're destabilizing our whole family." He sighed and rubbed his face like he was exhausted. Then he admitted something that actually shocked me. He said he's been feeling more and more alienated in his own home, like I roll my eyes at everything he believes, like he can't say what's on his mind without me treating him like an idiot. That stung, because in my head, I've been the one tiptoeing around him. But I can see how it might look that way from his side. I told him I don't think he's stupid, but I do think some of his political views are harmful. He fired back with, "And you don't think yours are?" And we were teetering on the edge of another fight when I stopped myself and said, "This is why we need therapy. We can't even have this conversation without it blowing up." To my surprise, he didn't shut it down. He actually said, "Maybe you're right. Maybe we do need someone else in the room." That tiny glimmer of hope has been keeping me afloat. I found a therapist who specializes in couples work, and we've scheduled our first appointment for next week. He's not thrilled about it, but he agreed. That's something. In the meantime, we've been trying to stick to neutral topics, kids, work, house projects. But even then, it feels like walking a tightrope. For example, last night we were watching the news, and something about the election came up. I instinctively grabbed the remote and switched to a cooking show because I knew if we let it play, we'd spiral. He noticed, raised an eyebrow, but didn't say anything. The silence between us was heavy, but at least it wasn't a fight. The kids, though, I can tell they're picking up on the tension. Our daughter asked me if Dad and I are fighting like Grandma and Grandpa used to. That broke me a little inside. I told her every couple argues, but we love each other and we're working through it. I don't know if she believed me, and here's the thing I'm wrestling with the most. Am I really holding on because I believe we can fix this? Or am I holding on because I'm terrified of divorce? When I picture splitting up, I see my own childhood all over again. Custody schedules, tense holidays, sitting in my room listening to my parents talk about each other through gritted teeth. I don't want that for my kids. But I also don't want to model a marriage where one parent is constantly undermined or silenced. I'm scared of therapy because what if the therapist tells us we're fundamentally incompatible now? What if the only healthy option is to walk away? Part of me thinks I'd rather keep pretending than blow everything up. But another part of me knows that pretending will only last so long before it eats me alive. So, yeah, that's where we're at. Cautiously circling each other, waiting for therapy, trying not to step on landmines in the meantime. Some days I feel hopeful. Other days, I feel like I'm watching my marriage dissolve in slow motion. I'll update again after we've had a few therapy sessions. For now, I'm just bracing myself. Final update. It's been a few months since I last posted, and a lot has happened. Some of you asked me to come back with an update, and I think I'm finally in the right headspace to close this chapter. We did go to therapy. At first, it was exactly what I hoped it would be, a safe space with someone neutral who could slow us down before we tore each other apart. The therapist was good at pointing out patterns, like how I retreat when I feel overwhelmed, while my husband doubles down and pushes harder. She called it the pursue-withdraw dynamic, and once she named it, I couldn't not see it everywhere in our marriage. The first couple of sessions were surprisingly calm. We both admitted that we didn't want to divorce, that we loved each other, that we wanted stability for the kids. For a little while, I thought maybe this was just a rough patch, and we'd come out stronger on the other side. But by the fifth or sixth session, the cracks started to show. We couldn't avoid politics forever. Therapy forced us to put it on the table. And once it was there, it was like Pandora's box. We didn't just disagree on Trump or DEI. We disagreed on values, on how to raise our kids, on what kind of people we wanted them to become. One of the hardest moments was when our therapist asked each of us what values we wanted to pass down to our children. I said I wanted them to grow up compassionate, critical thinkers, respectful of women, understanding that equality matters. My husband said he wanted them to be strong, independent, and not brainwashed by woke nonsense. The therapist asked where those overlapped, and the only place we agreed was wanting them to be independent. Everything else? We were on opposite ends of the spectrum. After that, our sessions turned more into debates than therapy. I'd leave with a pounding headache, wondering why I kept putting myself through it. He'd leave angry, muttering about how the therapist is clearly on your side. At home, the tension never really left. Even small things, like what TV shows we let the kids watch, turned into political battlegrounds. Our daughter wanted to do a school project about women in history, and he made a comment about feminist propaganda. Our son asked about climate change, and he told him it was overblown. I'd correct him in front of the kids, and then we'd be at war again after they went to bed. The kids started tiptoeing around us. That was my breaking point. One night, our daughter asked if we were getting divorced, and she had tears in her eyes. She's only 13, but she's smart. She can see through the cracks we thought we were hiding. I told her we were working on things, but I couldn't shake the guilt that we were damaging them just by staying together in this constant state of hostility. About 6 weeks ago, I told him I thought we needed a trial separation. He exploded, accused me of giving up, of tearing the family apart, of choosing politics over marriage. But once the dust settled, he agreed. He moved into a rental apartment not far from the house so he could still see the kids regularly. And you know what? The calm that descended on the house once he left was startling. The kids relaxed. I relaxed. We laughed at dinner again. The silence wasn't heavy anymore. It was peaceful. I hadn't realized how much constant tension I'd been carrying until it lifted. We've kept therapy going, but separately now. For me, it's been eye-opening. I realized I wasn't just afraid of divorce. Because of my childhood, I was also afraid of admitting I made a mistake by staying so long in a dynamic that wasn't healthy. I've had to grieve the version of my marriage I thought I had, versus the one I actually did. As for my husband, he's still angry. He tells mutual friends I left him because he voted for the wrong guy. He doesn't see that it was bigger than that. It wasn't just politics. It was values, respect, communication, and the way we treated each other when we disagreed. We're not officially divorced yet, but I've made peace with the fact that we're heading there. And honestly, I'm okay with it. I'd rather raise my kids in 2 calm, separate homes than one chaotic, divided one. Do I still love him? In some ways, yes. 20 years of marriage doesn't vanish overnight. But love isn't enough if the foundation is crumbling. And I don't want to teach my kids that love means sacrificing yourself, your voice and your peace just to keep the ship afloat. So, this is my final update. Not the happy ending I once imagined, but maybe the right one. My kids and I are okay. We're healing. And that's enough for me right now. Stories number 9. My name is Hannah. I'm 34. And right now I'm sitting on the edge of a hotel bed with a duffel at my feet, a hospital bag beside it, and an anxiety so big my chest feels like it's trying to climb out. In 12 hours I go into surgery to try to remove a malignant pituitary adenoma that's grown fast and close enough to my optic nerve that the doctors tell me it will take my sight if it isn't removed. 2 neurosurgeons in my region told me no, they didn't think they could operate safely. I had to fly to another part of the country to find someone willing to try. The surgeon who agreed is Dr. Anjali Patel. I met her once, briefly, the kind of meeting that leaves you feeling both terrified and oddly reassured because she speaks with the precision of someone who knows exactly how much responsibility they're taking. She explained the possibilities without sugarcoating. I could wake up and be fine. I could wake up blind. I could wake up with severe neurological deficits. Or, the thing I stare at in the small hours, I could die on the table. They also told me that if even microscopic amounts of tumor are missed, this thing will return. I'm not an expert in any of this. I'm just a person with a life and people who love me, and the math of risk is a crushing weight. I've been turned away twice before. Those no's didn't just frighten me. They made the world feel very small for a while, like the places I used to trust to keep me alive had decided I wasn't a safe bet. That was brutal. Then Dr. Patel said she would try. She used words like challenging and meticulous and experience, and that part of me that still wants to believe in human competence clung to those words like a lifeline. But the what-ifs won't shut up. What if she's arrogant? What if she's the one who tries and fails where others would not have even tried? What if she removes the tumor and I still lose my sight? What if I die? My sister Emily will be here in 2 days. She's my person in a lot of ways. She dropped everything to check flights and is on standby. I asked the hospital if she could arrive sooner and they were helpful on the phone. But the logistics didn't allow for a same-day flight this time. That leaves me with these last hours alone, skittering between anger, terror, and a grief I didn't know I still had room for. I keep imagining the surgeon's hands and the microscope and the bright blue of the OR lights. I imagine waking up and not recognizing my face in the mirror because my eyes don't work. I imagine waking up and seeing clearly and being allowed my life back. I imagine silence. People have said kind things. A neighbor dropped off soup. A friend called to remind me to breathe. A colleague texted a playlist. It helps, a bit. But the loneliness is sharp when the clock reads something like 11:08 p.m. and the TV hums with someone else's show and I am only me and my thoughts. I keep picturing the hospital, corridor, and the nurses. There will be Nurse Lena on nights, I hope, and the scrubbed faces. The surgical mask pauses before they take the next breath. I'm trying to be practical in between the spirals. I've made a list of small things I want done if something goes sideways. Notes for my sister about where important documents are, passwords for accounts she'll need, a folder with insurance information, the name of my primary care doctor, where the kids' school files are if you don't have kids. Ignore that line. I don't know your life like you do. I only know mine. I wrote a very short message I could text if I needed to step away from my phone for any reason. Emergency contact, Emily. Hospital, St. Mary's. Or, Dr. Patel. Stuff like that is boring and steady and it presses back against the terror for a few minutes. I also did something harder. I wrote a note that feels like an honest letter, not an ode or a dramatic goodbye. I wrote about ordinary things. The latte place on Elm Street. The stupid typo on the grocery list we shared in January. The way sunlight slices through the blinds at 7 a.m. And I told the people I love that I loved living. I recorded a voice message for my sister. The voice sounds calm on playback, but I could barely get the words out when I made it. If you're in that small, sharp place yourself, know this softly. You don't have to manufacture grand speeches. Small, true things matter. They are enough. There are practical details the team suggested which felt good to do because they put the steering wheel back into my hands. I asked Dr. Patel, again, to walk me through step by step, to explain what she will do, what she cannot control, and what the plan is if something shifts. She didn't promise miracles. She promised clarity. She asked if my medical directives were in order and whether anyone knew my wishes about life support or organ donation. Those are awful choices. They feel like making a spreadsheet for your own disappearance. But they are merciful in a way. They let you say what you want while your head is clear. If you're reading this, and you're thinking you don't know how to help somebody in my situation, here's what actually helped me. Someone to ask me if I wanted them to sit with me in silence. Someone to run down a list of tiny errands without drama. Someone to text a picture of their dog and break the weight of the world with something ridiculous and ordinary. The smallness of ordinary life becomes oxygen. About the fear of waking up a vegetable. I've been honest to everyone who will listen. That scares me more than blindness, strangely. Blindness is terrifying because of loss, because of changes to how I navigate the world. The thought of being alive but not knowing that I am present, or of being utterly dependent in ways that were not my life plan, is primal fear. Still, I know too many stories of people who have learned new ways to be alive and find meaning even after devastating change. Now, I try to flip the script in my head sometimes and imagine being taught how to read Braille, how to reorder my days in ways I didn't think I would like, how to discover new small wonders. But the flip is not guaranteed. It's hope, not certainty. People have told me to ask for a second opinion. I did, and the two who said no were not being cruel for refusing. They were being realistic about their skill sets. I respected them enough to fly away and find someone who said yes. That choice sits with me. 2 doctors declined, and 1 accepts the risk. There's no single right way forward in that scenario. There's only the path that feels like it has the best chance and the best team, and the one I can live with choosing. If it sounds odd, I also asked the surgeon what the plan was for post-op pain, for ICU monitoring, for early rehab. She went through antibiotic protocols, hormone replacement possibilities, the need for potential cortisol support, and the ophthalmology team's schedule for the first 48 hours. It's a lot of medical language. I don't retain most of it. But it calmed me, because it meant that they have thought through the immediate steps. They'll watch for the things that are likely, and they'll try to catch problems early. That is the thing we can ask of modern medicine. Vigilance and preparedness, not certainty. Right now, I am trying to keep my last waking hours human. I am playing a playlist of annoying pop songs that make me laugh. I am going to heat up a bowl of soup and set it beside the bed even though I won't likely be hungry. I texted silly photos to an old friend, the kind of inconsequential thing that is like a small, warm, ridiculous ritual. I lit a lavender candle and read a paragraph of my favorite book. If the worst happens, I want to have these tiny, sweet things in the edges of my memory. If you are living something remotely like this, only you know how you want to spend your last unoperated hours. Some people plan joy. Some people plan lists for others. Some people want music and a favorite sweater. Choose one small thing you can control. Call one person. Tell them a silly story from childhood that always made you laugh. Remind them who you are under the fear. I don't want to be dramatic. I don't want to write a final epitaph. I want to get through the night and wake up to coffee and fluorescent hospital rooms and an angry nurse telling me to stop asking questions. But the truth is honest and blunt. I might die. I might not. It's a terrible place to sit. If I die, I want to leave the people I love with something that is me, not just medical jargon. So I wrote. I said plainly, I loved living. I loved baking bad cookies on Sunday afternoons. I loved loud road trips. I loved the way my sister says my name like a secret. I am grateful. I am sorry for the tiny ways I failed. Goodbye is too big and small at once, so, I said, if you ever want to laugh about something ridiculous, remember the time I tried to assemble that IKEA dresser without pants and still managed to put the top on backwards. If you want to help me, and if your time and energy allow, I would be so grateful if you could do one concrete thing for me. Be kind to the people who will be around me after the surgery. The hospital staff will be exhausted. The family will be raw. My sister will be arriving with the rest of my life in a suitcase. Simple kindness and patience go a long way. If you are alone and reading these words because you are also in a hotel room or a hospital waiting area or your own home with a clock ticking, you are allowed to be terrified. You are allowed to be practical. You are allowed to be both. The last thing I will say is this. Tell someone now what you want them to know. It doesn't have to be big. It can be a sentence. If I don't wake up, call Mom and tell her the sunflower seeds under the sink are for the bird feeder. Say it. The list will help your brain stop doing cartwheels. I'm going to turn the lights low and put on something stupid on the TV. I'll charge my phone and set the do not disturb for the next chunk of time that is mine. If you'd like, I can try to write something, a short note, a voice message script, or a tiny list of where things are, to send to the person who will be with you next. I can also sit here and keep you company in words for as long as you need. I won't promise anything about the surgery's outcome because that isn't mine to promise. I will promise to be steady for you in this thread, to listen, and to help with any small practical things you want to prepare before you go in. If this is the last thing I do and I don't get to say it in person, I loved living. Goodbye for now. Hannah. Stories number 10. Aita. If I choose to stop sending money once my grandmother passes away? So I 32F used to live in a poor area somewhere in Asia. My mom died when I was a baby, and my dad, being a very young single dad back then, worked overseas and would send money to my grandmother to support me and my brother, who was 2 years older than me. When I was 17, my dad got me and my brother to move overseas with him, and since then me and my brother continually send money to my grandmother 75F every month to support her everyday needs, as thanks for raising us. This arrangement went on for 15 years. Now I have an uncle, 56, my grandmother's son, and my mom's brother, who was a drug addict for most his life, has never held a stable job, has been in and out of prison due to drugs, and now has become disabled after a traffic accident and could therefore not be able to work anymore. About 10 years ago, when he got released from prison, him and his partner 30SF, also unemployed, moved in with my grandmother, and my uncle has so far been clean since. My grandmother takes money out of the allowance that we give her to give to my uncle as his allowance, But whatever, we didn't care as it was her money, and she can do with it what she wants. Now 4 years ago, my uncle's partner got pregnant. We all thought it was very irresponsible of them, but since the baby was born, my grandmother has since become attached to the kid, my cousin, and would spend most of her money on him. Me and my brother got no issue with it. Like I said, it's her money. But then I had a call from her the other day, and she asked me if my brother and I could continue sending money to her bank account even after she dies to support my uncle, his partner, and their son. Now life's tough for me at the moment. I live in a first world country, but the cost of living is ridiculously high, and we're struggling to make ends meet. Bonus points. If you guess which country I live in, LOL, I apologized to my grandmother and told her I don't think I can do it because they're not my responsibility, and I also have my own kid on the way. My brother also objected to this plan as he just got married and wanted to save up for a house and for their own future kids. My grandmother was upset and said, "Okay, fine. Don't worry about it. I'll find other ways to provide financial support for them when I die. I'll make sure everything in my bank account will go to them, and I can sell some of my stuff too." And then she hung up on me. I was very firm about it during the phone call, but now I feel like shit. I do feel sorry for my little cousin, but for once I just want my uncle and his partner to try to find the means to make their own money. And I mean legally, because of their past, take responsibility, and not have to rely on me or my brother. So Aita Edit. Hi everyone. Thanks so much for your replies. I've calmed down a bit now and discussed your answers with my husband, who agrees. Yes, I agree, I am hurt. I love my grandmother. She was practically my own mother for 17 years, so to have her hang up the phone on me was quite hurtful. Also, for the people who suggested saying I should tell my grandmother I'd send the money but don't do it when she's gone, the issue for me is that she'll obviously tell everyone, and I mean everyone in our extended family, about this plan. And when eventually I don't send money, my entire family will make me and my brother the villains. Things are already so tense with them because they seem to think that the money I send my grandmother every month is not enough and I could do better. Bon, if I post photos of me and my husband enjoying ourselves somewhere, my relatives would often talk shit about us and say I'm selfish. I know it's easy to say don't care about what other people think, but IDK, maybe it's just cultural to respect my elders, or could be just me being too much of a people pleaser. Another edit. Sorry, I did not know the term third world country was offensive, so I've changed it now. I meant no harm by it. Stories. Number 11. ATA for giving my first child a name with the same first initial as my dad. And me when I didn't want my mom to do it for my half-siblings. My dad died when my mom was pregnant with me. They hadn't finalized a name for me when he passed, so my mom chose to give me a name with the same initial as his first name and from his culture. My dad was Irish, and say he was Rory fake names, and she named me Roisin. She wanted me to carry that part of him with me always. When I was 10, my mom remarried, and when I was 11, she had the first of my half-siblings. Her husband liked what Mom had done with my name by connecting it to Dad. Mom didn't want to leave me out, so she asked me if I'd like to add Irish R names into the mix for any half-siblings I would have. That way, one would be a W name like her, another would be a J name like her husband, and one could be an R names like mine. I told her she didn't need to do it, and I didn't want that because I liked it being for me and Dad. My mom was a touch disappointed at the time, but she never asked me again. Then things were good. I'm married now and gave birth to my first child a few weeks ago. When my husband and I were expecting and talking names, he asked me if I'd like to use our Irish names for some of our children, and at least for our first. So we chose a name for our baby that fit with what Mom did with me and Dad. A week after giving birth, my mom told me she was upset that I had used it when I hadn't wanted her to do it for my half-siblings. She said, why did I say I wanted to keep it just me and Dad when clearly that wasn't true? I told her it was different because it was continuing with my own children and Dad's grandchildren, so it made more sense than continuing it with half-siblings who have a different dad. Mom said she wanted to do it to include me, and she hated me being the only differently named person, and she felt like it was a snub to my siblings that I didn't want any to share my initial. I also want to clarify that this is just an initial thing. It's not like we're Riley, Riley, and Riley, or a Michael, Michelle similar. It's literally just one initial. I wanted to clear that up in case I didn't make it clear in my explanation. Stories number 12. Aita for snapping at my husband that he needs to get over his ADHD quirk. I really try to understand my husband's ADHD quirks and sensitivities, but this one made me snap. Apparently, I blink my eyes too loudly. It annoys him so badly that he's raised his voice telling me to stop and will storm out of the room if we're laying in bed, watching a movie or trying to sleep. He says I don't do it all the time, but he cannot handle the noise of my blinking most nights. I finally snapped at him last night after he told me to stop doing it, saying something along the lines of, "You need to get over it, or take responsibility of your ADHD and stop thinking this is normal." He's been to therapy and has been on medication for ADHD, but has since quit because he doesn't like it. Hi, so am I the AH for snapping at him? Update. I really appreciate everyone's comments. I had my husband read them over as well, and he agrees that taking his frustration out on me was not okay. While he hasn't raised this concern until recently, our best guess is that a traumatic birth back in June is likely causing a ton of stress and making it worse. We did test it out, and he can certainly hear me blinking, or some sound that aligns with the timing even if his eyes are closed or I'm turned away. I agree with the folks saying it's likely misophonia and not an ADHD symptom. He says, "It's like a wet glass clinking sound, similar to other people in the comments." He has apologized and agreed to go back to therapy, see his doctor for a potential diagnosis, full psych evaluation, and try earplugs. It could also be brought on by suddenly stopping his medication, so he's going to speak with his doc about that as well. In the meantime, he's agreed to sleep on the couch if he can't cope, and to not even bring up the blinking to me. Fingers crossed it lasts. Thanks everyone again. Stories number 13. My parents taught me to use fake words growing up, and it still haunts me. As an adult, when I was a kid, I always thought every family just sort of made up their own words for stuff. Like, I truly believed there were two parallel dictionaries, one for real words and one for family words. And in my house, the family words always won. It started with the silly ones. My mom, Denise, was horrified at the word but, like absolutely scandalized. One time when I was maybe 6 years old, I fell off the swings in our backyard, landed flat on my backside, and blurted out, "Ow, my butt." My mom gasped like I had dropped the worst curse word known to mankind. She put her hands on her hips and said in that sharp mom voice, "Matthew James, we do not say that word in this house. You say patootie." I remember sitting there, dust all over my jeans, tears in my eyes from the fall, and feeling embarrassed that I had slipped up. Not because of the pain, but because apparently I had sinned by calling my own body part the wrong thing. From then on, every time I said but, she'd correct me with patootie. My dad, Robert, would just roll his eyes and let it go. But Mom was relentless. And it wasn't just but. We weren't allowed to say fart. We had to say poof. Imagine being a middle school kid at a sleepover with your friends, trying to fit in, and someone lets one rip. All the kids are laughing, going, "Dude, who farted?" And then me, trying to join in, blurting out, "Ha, somebody poofed." Everyone stared at me like I'd grown a third arm. I wanted to sink through the floor. It got worse. Poop wasn't poop. Nope. It was boom boom. Or sometimes oopsie. I can't even explain how many times I got roasted at school because I'd slip up and say, "I gotta go make a boom boom." Kids are ruthless. My friend Jason still teases me about it 20 years later. But it wasn't just bathroom stuff or body parts. My mom had this obsession with avoiding anything she thought was negative energy. Words like no, don't, or can't were strictly off limits. If I pushed away a plate of broccoli and said, "I don't like this," she would correct me immediately. "Oh no, sweetheart, you can like it. You've just decided not to eat it today. Try again." Like, what? I was 7. I wasn't making a decision. I just hated the smell of overcooked broccoli. But nope. In our house, you didn't not like anything. You just weren't in the mood for it right now. My little sister Emily once said she couldn't do her math homework. Wordy, Mom cut her off instantly. "Emily Grace, we don't say we can't. Say, I'm still learning." It turned into this whole thing where we weren't allowed to express dislike, frustration, or inability. Everything had to be reframed into this toxic positivity toddler speak. The scariest part, though, was how my parents handled words about our bodies. I didn't know the proper names for basic anatomy until I was in high school. Mom insisted we use cutesy code words. My sister's parts were cookies. Mine was a turtle. Don't even ask how that one started. I have blocked out the trauma. It sounds funny now, but it was actually dangerous. When I was about 10, a kid in our neighborhood, Tyler, did something really inappropriate to me at the park. I tried to tell my mom about it, but all I could say was, "He touched my turtle." She looked at me like I was speaking in riddles. I kept repeating it, getting more and more upset, and she just didn't understand the seriousness of what I was saying. It wasn't until later, when I finally blurted out the actual body part name at school, that a teacher stepped in and things were handled. I still remember the look on my mom's face when the teacher called her and used the real word. She turned beet red, like the teacher had sworn at her. And instead of apologizing for not giving me the vocabulary I needed, she scolded me for using ugly words. Even as an adult, this crap has lingered. I still hesitate before saying fart out loud, like it's a dirty word. I cringe a little when someone casually says butt in conversation. It's like my brain has been rewired to hear those normal words as taboo. And don't even get me started on dating. In college, I was with this girl, Hannah, and one night I told her, "Hold on, I gotta go make a boom boom." I didn't even realize what I had said until she burst out laughing and asked if I was 5 years old. I wanted to crawl into a hole and never come out. I've spent years unlearning this stuff. Therapy helped a lot, especially unpacking. The way my parents' word policing also stunted my ability to set boundaries. I never knew how to say, "I don't like this," or "I can't do this," without sugarcoating it into something ridiculous. Which, shocker, made it really hard to advocate for myself in relationships, work, and life in general. Now that I'm older, I can see where my mom was coming from in her own weird way. She thought she was protecting us from negativity, shielding us from the ugliness of the world. But what she actually did was leave us unequipped to deal with reality. The world doesn't care if you aren't in the mood for broccoli today. The world cares if you can clearly say no when something is wrong, or stop when someone crosses a line. The vocabulary you give your kids isn't just about sounding polite. It's about giving them the tools to communicate, protect themselves, and exist in the real world. So yeah, I'm 29 years old, and I still flinch a little when I hear the word butt. Thanks a lot, Mom. Update. My parents taught me to use fake words growing up, and it still haunts me as an adult. Wow. I didn't expect my original post to blow up the way it did. I honestly thought maybe a couple of people would relate or laugh at the ridiculousness of patootie and boom boom. I didn't realize how many others had similar experiences. Reading through the comments was weirdly healing. It made me realize that I'm not crazy for still being hung up on this stuff, and I'm definitely not alone. So a few things have happened since I wrote the original post. First off, I actually showed it to my girlfriend, Nicole. We've been dating for a little over a year, and while she knows bits and pieces of my cutesy vocabulary trauma, she didn't realize how deep it went. She read the whole thing, laughed so hard she cried at the turtle part. Thanks, Mom, for that gem. And then got really quiet at the part about the neighbor kid. Tyler, she told me point blank, that's not just quirky parenting, Matt, that's dangerous. You didn't have the words to protect yourself. Hearing her say that hit me harder than I expected. I always brushed it off like, yeah, my mom was weird about words, haha. But Nicole is right. It's not just quirky or funny. It put me in danger, and it made me ashamed of normal things. After that, I ended up calling my sister Emily. She's 27 now, married, and lives a few states away. We don't talk as often as we should, but I texted her a screenshot of part of my post and asked, "Do you remember all this?" She immediately called me, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. She goes, "Oh my God, Matt." Yes. I literally thought the word poop was a curse word until 3rd grade. Do you remember when I got detention for writing butt on the chalkboard? Apparently, she had been trying to impress her friends at school by writing butt during free time. The teacher scolded her, and when she told Mom later, Mom gave her the whole, "we don't use ugly words" speech. Again. Emily said she remembers being genuinely confused about why her teacher didn't agree that patootie was better. But Emily also shared something I didn't know. When she was around 11, she had a health scare. Nothing major, but she was having some stomach pains and had to go to the doctor. Mom kept correcting her language while she was trying to explain what hurt. Like, the poor kid was sitting in the doctor's office saying, "My patootie feels funny," and the doctor had no idea what she meant. Emily said the doctor pulled her aside gently and told her, "Sweetie, can you point to where it hurts?" That was the only way they figured it out. Emily told me she never forgave Mom for that. Here's where things get complicated. I ended up bringing all this up to my mom. Yeah, I know, probably a mistake. Nicole and I had dinner with my parents last weekend. We were sitting in their kitchen, just chatting, and I don't even know what set it off. But Mom corrected me on something. I think I said fart while telling a story, and she immediately goes, "Matthew James, you know we don't use that word in this family." I'm 29 years old, and she still does this. Something in me just snapped a little. I told her, "Mom, I'm almost 30. I can say fart. I can say butt. And you really messed us up with all those fake words when we were kids." She got super defensive. Of course. She launched into this whole speech about how she wanted to raise us with positivity and innocence, and how she didn't want crass words in her household. She actually said, "Would you rather I let you run around swearing like a sailor at 6 years old?" I told her, "There's a huge difference between saying shit and saying butt, Mom." Nicole was just sitting there squeezing my knee under the table, probably trying to keep me from blowing up. Then I brought up the serious part. I told her flat out, "When Tyler touched me, I didn't have the right words to tell you what happened. That's on you. You made it so much harder for me to communicate." The room went dead silent. My dad, Robert, looked up from his plate and just stared at me. Mom's face went pale. She stammered something about not remembering that, and, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I said, "I tried. You didn't listen because I didn't use your cutesy words." That shut the whole dinner down. Nicole and I left pretty soon after. Later that night, my dad actually called me. He said, "Oh, son, I'm sorry. I should have stepped in more when your mom was doing that stuff." I knew it was silly, but I didn't think it was hurting anything. I didn't realize how much it affected you and Emily. He sounded genuinely remorseful. My mom, on the other hand, hasn't spoken to me since. Emily told me Mom called her and ranted about how I'm making her out to be a monster on the internet. So yeah, "Hi Mom, I guess you found the post? But Emily's on my side," she said. "Don't back down." This stuff really did screw us up. I don't know where things stand with my mom now. She's stubborn as hell, and I doubt she'll ever admit she was wrong. But at least I got it off my chest. For the first time, I told her exactly how her choices affected me, and honestly, reading all your comments gave me the courage to do that. So thank you to everyone who shared their own fart poof or penis yash wee wee stories. Thank you for making me feel less alone. And to everyone who pointed out how important it is to teach kids the correct words for their bodies. You're absolutely right. If I ever have kids, I'm making sure they know the real words. No shame, no cutesy nonsense. So yeah, that's the update. My relationship with my mom is rocky now, but my relationship with myself feels a little stronger. And that feels like progress. Final update. My parents taught me to use fake words. Growing up, and it still haunts me as an adult, it's been about 6 months since my last update. A lot has happened since that dinner with my parents, and honestly, it's been a roller coaster. After that dinner, there was silence. My mom didn't talk to me for almost 2 months. Emily kept me posted on her moods. She said Mom was alternating between furious and sad, which sounds about right. My dad, bless him, tried to mediate a few times, but Mom refused to meet. At first I felt guilty, like maybe I had broken our family by bringing up the past. But then I realized I didn't break anything. I just finally spoke the truth. Nicole was incredible through all of this. She reminded me constantly that what happened growing up wasn't my fault, that my feelings were valid, and that I had every right to speak up, even if it made my mom angry. Honestly, Having her in my corner made me braver than I'd ever been with my parents before. After a couple of months, I decided I had to try again. I scheduled a Saturday to drive down to my parents' house, figuring face-to-face would be better than texts or calls. Emily offered to come too, which I accepted immediately. She's always been a rock. The confrontation, if you can even call it that, was intense. Mom tried to start with small talk, offering me a plate of her famous cinnamon rolls, which I politely declined. I could tell she was nervous, maybe even ashamed, but she wasn't going to admit it yet. Dad was quietly supporting us both. Finally, I took a deep breath and just said it. Mom, Dad, I need to finish what I started months ago. When I was growing up, you used fake words for real things, body parts, emotions, negative words, and it hurt me. It didn't just confuse me. It made it really hard to communicate about serious things, and it left me ashamed of normal things. That's why I'm still so uncomfortable with some words today. That's why Emily and I struggled for years with boundaries and self-expression. Mom stiffened. She opened her mouth, like she was about to protest, but I held up my hand. Please, just listen first. I'm not blaming you in the sense of you're horrible parents, but I need you to hear how this affected me. I talked for probably half an hour, giving examples. Tyler touching me, trying to tell her what happened, saying turtle instead of the right word, falling off the swing and being corrected for saying but, Emily getting detention for the chalkboard incident. I kept my voice calm but firm. I wanted her to understand, not just feel attacked. Emily added her perspective too, which helped. She talked about the doctor incident and how confusing and sometimes dangerous the fake words were. Hearing it from her made Mom visibly uncomfortable. Her hands were shaking slightly, her jaw tight. Then, after a long pause, Mom finally spoke. I didn't realize it was that bad, she said quietly. I thought I was protecting you. I didn't know it was hurting you. I thought, maybe we were helping you be positive, strong and polite. I nodded. I know you meant well, but being polite doesn't mean giving kids fake words and taking away their ability to express real feelings. You need to let kids say, no, or I don't like this, or even call their own body parts by their real names. That's how they stay safe and grow up with confidence. Mom's eyes welled up a little. She admitted, I see that now. I just don't know how to make up for it. I took a deep breath. You don't have to make up for everything. Just acknowledge it. And going forward, don't do this with the grandkids or with anyone else. Just let them have the words they need. And surprisingly, she agreed. She actually apologized. Not a half-hearted, I'm sorry you feel that way, but a real, heartfelt apology. She said, I was wrong, and I'm sorry I made things harder for you and Emily. Dad chimed in too, apologizing for not stepping in more when we were kids. That was a big moment. Honestly, hearing both of them acknowledge the harm, not just defend their actions, was healing in a way I didn't expect. We didn't suddenly become this perfect, ultra-open family. Mom still teases me about boom-boom sometimes, but now it's more playful than controlling. She actually listens when Emily or I talk about things that are hard to say. The tension is gone. The biggest change, though, has been in me. I feel freer now. I can say but without cringing. I can express boundaries without guilt. I can even joke about my childhood traumas without feeling ashamed. And Emily feels the same. She said it feels like a weight has been lifted. Nicole says I seem lighter, more confident. I think she's right. Finally standing up for myself. Finally making my parents really hear me. It changed something. It didn't fix the past, but it did fix the present. And that's enough. I've also realized something important. Parenting is hard, and everyone makes mistakes. My parents weren't evil. They were misguided. But the lesson here is huge. Words matter. The words you give your kids shape how they see the world and themselves. Protect them from harm, yes. But don't protect them from reality. Don't take away the words they need to survive it. So that's it. That's the final update. Things with my parents are better than they've been in years, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I can truly communicate without fear or shame. If you're reading this and struggling with a similar thing, fake words, overprotective, positive language, toxic, cutesy vocabulary. Know that it's okay to speak up. It might be scary, it might cause conflict, but being honest about your feelings is the only way to heal. And to my parents, if you're reading this, thanks for finally listening. Stories number 14. My wife thought she caught me cheating, but her plan backfired in the funniest way. So this happened a few years back, but it's still one of those stories that comes up at family gatherings because nobody can believe how ridiculous it was. To set the stage, my wife at the time, Claire, and I had been married for about 8 years. We were in our early 30s, living in Ohio, both working full-time jobs, and honestly, things had gotten a little stale. Not terrible, not screaming matches every night, but the kind of stale where little annoyances start to feel like big betrayals. One of Claire's biggest frustrations with me was that I was always late. Always. If dinner was at 6, I'd roll in around 6:30. If we were supposed to leave for her parents' house at 2, I'd still be in the shower at 2:15. It wasn't malicious. I'm just one of those people who constantly underestimates how long things take. Claire, on the other hand, is the kind of person who shows up 20 minutes early to everything. You can see where the tension comes in. This particular night, I was supposed to be home by 7. She had cooked dinner, set the table, and even opened a bottle of wine. And me, I was stuck at work because a client, Greg, had decided that right before closing time was the perfect opportunity to nitpick an entire contract. By the time I wrapped up, grabbed my stuff, and fought through traffic, I was 45 minutes late. Again. When I walked through the door, I knew instantly she was pissed. The house was silent, lights dimmed, no smell of food in the air. At first, I thought maybe she went upstairs, but then I saw this dramatic, handwritten note on the kitchen counter. In big, bold letters it said, "I've had enough. I'm leaving you. Don't try to find me." I blinked at it for a second, my heart thudding in my chest. For half a moment, I thought she was serious. Then something in the back of my brain went, "Wait, this feels theatrical." Like the handwriting was almost too perfect, the wording too dramatic. And Claire isn't exactly subtle when she's mad. So instead of panicking, I leaned against the counter and let out a long sigh. I glanced around the kitchen, then down the hallway, then back at the note. That's when I spotted it. 2 feet sticking out from the bottom of our bed frame in the bedroom. Small feet, painted toenails, wiggling ever so slightly. She was hiding under the bed. Now, any normal husband might have walked in, called her out, laughed, and diffused the situation. But me? I decided to be a little petty. Because if Claire wanted drama, I was going to give her the whole Broadway show. I grabbed a pen from the junk drawer, flipped the note over, and scribbled something down quickly. Then I pulled out my phone, dialed a random number, pretty sure I just called the pizza place to make it sound real, and said loudly, "She's finally gone." "Yeah, I know. About damn time. I'm coming over. Wear that French nightie. I love you. Can't wait to do all the naughty things you like." I hung up, jingled my car keys on purpose, and strolled out the front door. I even slammed it for dramatic effect. Then I got in my car, pulled around the block, and parked. I wanted to give her enough time to crawl out, check the note, and stew in whatever emotions were brewing. Meanwhile, under that bed, Claire must have been going through every stage of grief in rapid succession: rage, heartbreak, betrayal, despair. She probably thought she'd just caught me cheating red-handed. Which, for the record, I never did. I might have been chronically late, but I was never unfaithful. After about 15 minutes, I snuck back in through the garage. The house was quiet again. I crept into the bedroom, and there she was, sitting on the edge of the bed, tears streaming down her face, clutching the note like it was a death warrant. I almost felt bad. Almost. She looked up at me with fire in her eyes and screamed, "Who was that?" I raised an eyebrow, played dumb, and asked, "Who was who?" "The woman you were calling," she shouted. "The one you're running off to with." I walked over, took the note from her hands, and turned it around so she could see what I had written on the back. In messy handwriting, it said, "I can see your feet. Also, we're out of bread. Back in 5. Her jaw dropped. She looked at me, then back at the note, then back at me again. And then, like a balloon deflating, all the rage just evaporated. She started laughing. Like, full on, belly laughing, tears rolling down her cheeks. I couldn't help it. I started laughing too. The absurdity of it all, the way she thought she was pulling one over on me, the way I flipped it on her, it all came crashing down into one ridiculous moment. That night, we didn't eat the fancy dinner she had planned. We ordered pizza, drank the wine straight from the bottle, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. And for a little while, the tension between us eased. Now, before anyone asks, no, Claire and I aren't together anymore. We divorced a few years later for reasons that had nothing to do with this story. We just grew apart, wanted different things, and realized we were better off as friends than partners. But this story lives on. Every Thanksgiving, my sister-in-law Heather brings it up. Every time someone in the family is being dramatic, my brother Daniel will smirk and say, "Careful, I can see your feet." Looking back, it's one of my favorite memories of that marriage. It was chaotic, petty, and ridiculous, but it was also us. Two stubborn people, caught in a game of one-upmanship, finding a way to laugh instead of scream. And honestly, if there's one thing I learned from that night, it's this. If you're going to hide under the bed to catch your partner in a lie, maybe make sure your feet aren't sticking out. Update. My wife thought she caught me cheating, but her plan backfired in the funniest way, so apparently my first post struck a nerve. I had no idea so many people out there had either staged dramatic gotcha moments in their relationships, or had partners who did. Reading through the comments was like peeking into a secret society of petty, dramatic spouses. Some of you should honestly write TV scripts anyway. A lot of you wanted to know what happened after the infamous "I can see your feet" night. Did Claire forgive me? Did she get madder? Did the joke blow up in my face? Well, buckle up, because it became a running saga in our marriage. The morning after the note fiasco, Claire was embarrassed. Not devastated, not furious anymore, just embarrassed. She came downstairs wearing one of my old sweatshirts, hair in a messy bun, and avoided eye contact with me. I was making coffee, trying to act normal when she mumbled, "I can't believe I actually hid under the bed." I bit back a laugh and said, "Yeah, not exactly subtle with the toes wiggling out." She groaned and covered her face with her hands. "God, Matt, I thought I was being so clever. I really thought you were going to break down when you saw that note, like in the movies." I handed her a mug of coffee and said, "Babe, we don't live in a soap opera. We live in Dayton. The most dramatic thing that happens here is when Kroger runs out of rotisserie chickens." She cracked up at that, and just like that, the tension broke. But the story didn't die. Oh no. Claire had to tell people. That weekend, we were at her sister Heather's house for a family barbecue. Midway through burgers and potato salad, Claire launched into the story. She did a dramatic reenactment. Her crawling under the bed, me striding in, the fake phone call, the note. By the time she got to the "I can see your feet" punchline, the entire backyard was howling. Even her dad, who's usually stone-faced, was doubled over, wheezing with laughter. From then on, it became an inside joke. Anytime Claire started nagging me for being late, I'd smirk and say, "Careful, I can see your feet." She'd roll her eyes but usually end up laughing. And if we were at a party or family event and someone else was being over-the-top dramatic, someone would inevitably drop the line. It stuck. But here's the thing. As funny as it was, it also became kind of a mirror for our relationship. Because yeah, we laughed that night. Yeah, it was one of our better memories. But the truth is, the fact that she even felt the need to stage that little test said a lot about where we were. A couple months later, we actually had a big conversation about it. We were sitting on the porch, drinking cheap wine out of mason jars, classy, I know, and she said, "You know, I think part of why I did that was because I didn't feel like you were taking me seriously anymore. Like you're late all the time. You brush off my frustration with jokes, and I just wanted you to react, to see if you'd even care." That hit me like a punch, to the gut, because she wasn't wrong. I was brushing her off. I had gotten into the habit of treating her frustration like nagging instead of really listening. So while the note prank ended in laughter, it started in loneliness. We tried to work on it after that. I made a real effort to be on time more often. I wasn't perfect, but I got better. Claire, in turn, worked on not turning every late arrival into a war crime. We went to couples therapy for a while too, which honestly helped us communicate better, even if it didn't save the marriage in the long run. But the story didn't fade away. It became legendary. One year, at a Christmas party with friends, our buddy Jason brought a loaf of bread wrapped up like a gift. On the tag, it said, "We're out of bread. Back in 5." Claire nearly choked on her wine laughing. Even after we divorced amicably, a couple years later, the story followed us. When I moved out, Claire texted me, "Don't try to find me. Also, can you grab milk on your way back to drop off the garage remote?" She couldn't resist. The last time I saw her, actually, was at a mutual friend's wedding. We were both standing at the bar when she leaned over and whispered, "By the way, I can see your feet." And we both just lost it. For a brief second, it felt like we were back in that kitchen, laughing until our stomachs hurt. So yeah, that stupid note and my even stupider prank became one of the most defining memories of our marriage. Proof that even when things were tough, we could still laugh together. And honestly, I wouldn't trade that memory for anything. For everyone asking if I regret how I handled it, no. Not even a little. Because if I'd just called her out right away, it would have been another fight, another night of anger. Instead, we got laughter, a story, and a phrase that's probably going to follow me to my grave. If I ever get remarried, I guarantee you at least one person will stand up during the speeches and say, "Careful, I can see your feet." And I'll be okay with that. Final update. My wife thought she caught me cheating, but her plan backfired. In the funniest way, it's been a few years since my last update, and I didn't think I'd be writing again. Honestly, I thought the story had run its course. But recently, something happened that made me realize this ridiculous little note under the bed saga will probably outlive me. So here I am for one last post. First off, yes, Claire and I are still divorced. We've both moved on. She's remarried now. Actually, her new husband Dan seems like a genuinely good guy. We've crossed paths a few times, and he's one of those people who's impossible not to like. Friendly, funny, and you can tell he really loves her. And before anyone asks, no, there's no bitterness there. Claire and I had our time and it ended, but we didn't burn the whole house down in the process. Here's the funny part, though. A couple months ago, we were both at a mutual friend's 40th birthday party. Claire was there with Dan, and I was there with my girlfriend, Emily. At one point, someone brought up legendary couple stories, and of course, the bednote story resurfaced. But this time, it wasn't me or Claire telling it. It was Dan. He stood there, beer in hand, and said, "You guys ever heard about the time Claire hid under the bed to catch her husband cheating?" And then he launched into the whole thing. Her note, me pretending to call a mistress, the "I can see your feet" punchline. Like he'd rehearsed it 100 times. The room was roaring. Emily was wiping tears from her eyes, and Claire was half laughing, half hiding her face. When Dan got to the part about the bread, he smirked and said, "And now, whenever she thinks I'm running late, I just text her, 'Back in 5. Out of bread.'" I swear, I nearly spit my drink across the room. The fact that the joke had survived not only our marriage, but also carried into her new marriage. That's when it hit me. This dumb little prank became folklore. On the car ride home, Emily asked me, "Does it bother you that Claire and Dan use your joke?" I thought about it for a while before answering. At first, part of me wanted to be petty. Like, hey, that was my line, my prank, my legacy. But honestly, no, it doesn't bother me. If anything, it makes me weirdly proud. Because it means even though our marriage didn't last, the laughter did. And that, I think, is a hell of a lot more important than ownership of a punchline. Now, about Emily. She's the kind of person who, when she laughs, the whole room notices. And of course, she's latched onto the phrase too. If I forget to text her when I'm late, she'll send me a message. "I can see your feet." If I leave the house without grabbing groceries, she'll scribble a sticky note for me that says, "We're out of bread. Back in 5. Last week, I came home from work and found her hiding under the couch blanket with just her toes sticking out. When I asked what she was doing, she said, "Making sure you don't have a secret mistress." I told her, if I did, she'd be hiding under the coffee table. We both cracked up like idiots. Here's the thing. That old story could have been a symbol of bitterness, of broken trust, of the cracks in a marriage. But instead, It turned into this timeless little joke that bridges past and present. It's proof that humor, stupid, simple humor, can take the sting out of almost anything. And maybe that's the lesson I want to leave with this final update. Relationships end. People change. Life moves on. But sometimes, the things you think will break you apart end up being the very stories that tie you to each other forever. Claire and I aren't together, but we'll always share that night. And apparently, so will anyone who knows us, because I Can See Your Feet has officially become immortal, so yeah, that's the epilogue. No drama, no bitterness, just laughter echoing long after the fight was over. And if any of you reading this are in a relationship right now where you feel the need to test your partner with notes or hiding under beds, maybe just talk to them instead. Or at least make sure your toes aren't sticking out, because someone will see them, and they'll never let you forget it. Stories number 15. Aita for holding a grudge that I was uninvited to my boyfriend's mother's funeral. Me F35 and my boyfriend, M42, are from the same country but met overseas. We have been together 5 years and lived together. I did not meet his parents until year 4. He always had excuses such as distance, timing, and that his mom had dementia, and it would be too hard on her to meet new people. By the time I finally met her, her dementia had progressed and she disliked me immediately, which devastated me. I felt it had been left too late for us to form a bond. My partner is difficult. He values his privacy over connection and often puts up emotional roadblocks. His mum passed away last month. I assumed I would be at the funeral to support him. He flew home earlier to see her and I booked a flight after. The day before the funeral, I asked for details and he told me, maybe it's best you don't go. He said I barely knew his dad and had not met the extended family, so it was not the right setting. I said I wanted to support him, not anyone else. He went back and forth before finally telling me late at night not to come because he preferred to deal with things alone. I was devastated. On the day I sent him a kind message, he thanked me, but I did not hear from him until evening. The next day he said, I made the right choice not having you there. It would have been too stressful. He also said he had spoken to friends and family who agreed. Finding out his friends were there broke me even more. It has been 3 weeks and I cannot shake it. I already feel like I am low on his list. Below friends, family, nights out. Being excluded from one of the hardest days of his life feels like confirmation. For clarity, I have never suspected cheating. A week later I did spend a few days with his dad and met some of his friends, so I do not think he was hiding me. He has never seemed interested in female attention and prefers being with his male friends. Part of me wonders if I am being selfish. Should I just be compassionate and accept that grief makes people act differently? Or am I justified in feeling pushed out and hurt? Stories number 16. My baby sister took down Grandpa in the best way possible. I grew up in a small Midwestern town in the late 70s and early 80s, smack in the middle of two very different worlds. My parents were dyed-in-the-wool hippies. My dad had hair halfway down his back, a patchy beard that he swore looked like Jerry Garcia's, and an old Volkswagen van painted with flowers and peace signs. My mom wore flowing skirts, believed in natural remedies, and went to protests long before it was considered cool. They played Crosby, Stills and Nash records on repeat and burned incense in the living room. And then there were my grandparents, especially my grandpa. He was cut from an entirely different cloth. A former factory worker, gruff, conservative, deeply opinionated, and utterly intolerant of anything he considered soft. He thought real men wore buzz cuts, went to church every Sunday and kept their women in check. To him, my dad was basically a walking insult. The long hair, the lazy hippie lifestyle, the refusal to wear a tie at family gatherings. Grandpa hated it all. My grandma, on the other hand, was quiet, sweet, and endlessly patient. She put up with his barking but would shoot us little looks across the table that said, "Just ignore him. He'll tire himself out." I was about 10 years old during the breakfast that would become family legend. My sister, Katie, was 5. It was a summer morning, and Mom had left us with Grandma and Grandpa while she and Dad went to some local craft fair. Grandma served us oatmeal with brown sugar and a side of buttered toast. I remember sitting at the table, kicking my feet against the chair legs, half listening to the ticking of the old wall clock, when Grandpa came stomping in from the backyard. He smelled like sawdust and chewing tobacco, wearing his flannel shirt even though it was already getting hot outside. He sat down, poured himself a mug of black coffee, and right on cue, started in on Dad. "You kids know your daddy's got long hair, right?" he asked with that sneer he always had when he thought he was clever. Katie nodded because, well, yeah, Dad did have long hair. I kept my eyes on my oatmeal. I'd learned early on that engaging with Grandpa was a losing game. Grandpa leaned forward. "You know who else has long hair?" He paused for dramatic effect. "Girls. You know what that means? Your daddy's a girl." He let out this nasty little laugh, like he'd just dropped the greatest punchline of all time. I remember sighing and poking at my oatmeal, because I'd heard this routine 100 times before. Grandpa loved tearing people down, especially if they couldn't fight back. He thought it was tough love or some kind of lesson, but really, it was just mean. But Katie, sweet, tiny, blonde-haired Katie wasn't having it that morning. She frowned, her little eyebrows knitting together, and said, "No, he's not," Grandpa smirked. "Sure looks like it to me. Long hair's for women. Your daddy ought to be ashamed." Grandma gave him a sharp look, but she didn't say anything. I think she knew what was coming, though. Katie's fists were clenched at her sides. Her spoon was forgotten. She was shaking, her little 5-year-old brain working overtime to come up with the perfect counterattack. And then, "With the fire of righteous fury only a kindergartner can muster," she shot back. "Oh yeah? Well, you're bald, so that makes you a baby." The words landed like a thunderclap. I swear, time froze. I dropped my spoon into the oatmeal bowl with a splat. Grandma's eyes went wide. Grandpa's face went crimson, like someone had flipped a switch. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Nothing came out. For once in his life, the man had been completely, utterly, and perfectly shut down by a 5-year-old girl. Katie, realizing what she'd just done, puffed out her little chest and looked so proud of herself. She went back to her oatmeal like nothing had happened, spoon clinking against the bowl. Grandma pressed her lips together, trying not to laugh, but her shoulders shook with the effort. I was biting the inside of my cheek so hard it hurt. And Grandpa, he didn't say a single word. Not one. He finished his coffee, stood up without a word, and stomped out to his workshop in the backyard. You could hear the screen door slam, then the distant sound of him, fiddling with his tools. He avoided us the rest of the morning. That was the day my baby sister took down Grandpa. It became legendary in our family. Anytime Grandpa started up with his usual nonsense after that, Grandma would just murmur, "Careful now. Remember what Katie said." And he'd snap his mouth shut. Sometimes I'd catch him glaring at Katie like he was still stewing about it, but he never tried that long hair joke again. Even years later, when we were teenagers, the story would come up at Thanksgiving or Christmas. Someone would inevitably ask Katie to retell it, and she'd shrug like it was no big deal, but you could see the pride twinkling in her eyes. Now that we're all adults, Grandpa's been gone for a long time. He passed when I was in college. And while I'll be honest and say I don't miss his mean streak, I do think about that breakfast often. Not because of his cruelty, but because of Katie's bravery. She was 5 years old, but she understood something most adults never quite get. Bullies don't know what to do when you turn their own logic back on them. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a perfect mirror held up to his nonsense, and he couldn't handle it. So yeah, that's the story of how my baby sister completely obliterated a grumpy old man's ego with one sentence. And to this day, whenever anyone in the family tries to tease someone else with dumb logic, we still say, "Careful, don't get babied." Update: my baby sister took down Grandpa in the best way possible. I didn't expect so many people to love this story. Honestly, when I wrote it out, I thought it was just one of those quirky family memories you share once and forget about. But reading everyone's comments about their own grandpas, siblings, or childhood comebacks made me realize how universal it is. Families are messy. Kids are sharper than we give them credit for. And sometimes one tiny voice can do what a whole room full of adults can't. A lot of people asked what happened after that infamous breakfast, so here's a little more about how the whole thing played out over the years. First off, Grandpa never forgot it. He wouldn't talk about it openly. But you could tell the wound stuck with him. Every time Katie's name came up, his jaw would tighten just slightly. He never teased us about Dad's long hair again, but he did start making smaller digs in other directions. Our clothes, the music we liked, even the way we talked. He was always on the lookout for weak spots. But the difference was that after the baby comment, we all knew he could bleed. Grandma, though, oh, she loved it. I think she took a quiet satisfaction in seeing him put in his place. She was never cruel about it, but she had this little smirk whenever someone brought up the story. Like she had a secret weapon in her back pocket, and it wasn't her, it was Katie. Now here's where it gets funnier. That line, "You're bald, so that makes you a baby," became family currency. It spread way beyond our little breakfast table. At cookouts, cousins would repeat it. At school events, Mom would tell it to other parents. Even Dad, who usually tried not to antagonize his father-in-law, couldn't resist pulling it out when Grandpa got too mouthy. Once, at a 4th of July barbecue, Grandpa started going on about how real men don't wear sandals. Dad calmly took a sip of his beer and said, "Well, babies don't have any hair, so I guess we know who's the man here." The look on Grandpa's face was priceless. By the time Katie was in middle school, she'd become a little bit of a legend among our relatives. People treated her like she was this pint-sized philosopher who could cut through nonsense with one perfect sentence. She wasn't always like that. She was shy at school, quiet with strangers, but around family, she was sharp as a tack. And honestly, that breakfast gave her confidence she carried for the rest of her life. There's this one memory that stands out. I was in high school, maybe 16, when Grandpa got on one of his rants about kids these days. He was upset because my cousin was into skateboarding and wore his hat backwards. Grandpa went off. "Backwards hats are stupid. No respectable boy dresses like that. What kind of girl is going to want a boy who dresses like a delinquent?" And Katie, without even looking up from her book, said, "Probably the kind of girl who doesn't want to marry a bald baby." The room went dead, silent. Then everyone burst out laughing. Even Grandma couldn't contain it that time. Grandpa stormed off to his workshop, muttering under his breath. And that's when it became crystal clear. Katie had permanent immunity. He couldn't touch her without risking another humiliation. It's funny to think about now, but in a way, she changed the family power dynamics forever. Before that, Grandpa's word was law. He barked, people jumped. But after Katie's takedown, people realized he wasn't invincible. His bluster lost its edge. It didn't happen overnight, but little by little the fear turned into eye rolls, and then into jokes. By the time I went off to college, I think Grandpa had given up on trying to dominate conversations. He'd sit at the table, chew his food, and stay mostly quiet. Sometimes I wondered if he'd secretly learned something from that moment. That cruelty didn't make him respected, it just made him ridiculous. But knowing him, I think he was just sulking. Katie and I still talk about that day sometimes. She's in her 40s now, with kids of her own, and she tells them the story like it's a fairy tale. They call it the baby burn. Her oldest, Ethan, once told his bald soccer coach, "Don't worry, you're not a baby. You yell too much." Katie called me laughing so hard she could barely breathe. As for Grandpa, he passed away when I was in college. At his funeral, people told all the usual sanitized stories about his work ethic, his toughness, his stubborn pride. But when our family gathered at Grandma's afterward, what do you think was the first story that came up? Yep. Katie versus Grandpa, the showdown at the breakfast table. Even Grandma, in her black dress and pearls, leaned over to Katie and whispered, "He never lived that down." So in a strange way, that 5-year-old comeback outlasted him. It's the story people actually remember about him. Not his lectures, not his rules, not his temper. Just the time he got verbally demolished by a kindergartner. And honestly, I think that's a better legacy. Not because it makes him look bad, but because it makes the rest of us laugh. It's a reminder that no matter how intimidating someone seems, they can always be taken down a peg. Sometimes all it takes is a little voice and a lot of truth. These days, whenever anyone in our family gets too self-righteous or starts making dumb rules, someone will inevitably pipe up with, "Careful. Don't get babied." And we all crack up. It's become a family motto. I guess what I'm saying is, My sister's 5-year-old wit turned into a generational inside joke that shaped how we remember our family. And for me, that's the real magic of childhood moments. They don't just fade, they ripple forward, shaping the way we laugh, the way we talk, and the way we handle the people who think they're untouchable. So yeah, Grandpa might have thought he was teaching us tough lessons back then. But the real lesson came from Katie, sitting in her booster seat, firing back with the perfect line. And the lesson was this: never underestimate the baby sister. Final update. My baby sister took down Grandpa in the best way possible. It's been decades since that breakfast showdown, but the story has grown legs far longer than any of us could have imagined. I figured I'd write one last post because people keep asking if the baby burn lived on. And oh boy, did it ever. First, a little time travel. After my last update, a bunch of you asked what became of Katie. Well, she grew into exactly who you'd expect. Outspoken, sharp, funny, the kind of person who can diffuse an argument with one perfectly placed line. She's now a mom of 3, 2 boys and a girl, and if you think the baby comment ended with her, you're wrong. She passed that torch straight to her kids. Her oldest, Ethan, is 16 now. Tall, goofy, big into soccer. He's got that same mischievous streak Katie had as a kid. A couple years ago, he came home frustrated because one of his friends was being a jerk, calling him soft for not wanting to sneak out at night. Ethan, deadpan as anything, said, "Cool. Well, you still wet the bed in 3rd grade, so that makes you a toddler." The friend had nothing to say. Katie called me immediately, practically doubled over laughing. "It's genetic. The burn gene lives on." Her younger 2 aren't far behind. The middle kid, Lucas, once told an uncle at Thanksgiving, after said uncle complained about kids these days glued to their phones, "Well, at least we can work ours. You can't even send a text without calling Grandma for help." Mic drop. And little Anna, the youngest, is the spitting image of Katie at that age. Bright-eyed, soft-voiced, but ready to drop a verbal nuke if pushed. The wild thing is, this silly breakfast argument from the late 70s has become actual family folklore. I don't mean just our household, either. Extended family tells it. Old neighbors know it. At weddings, birthdays, funerals, you name it, the baby burn makes an appearance. It's part of our cultural fabric now, and the phrase, "stuck, don't get babied," that's what people say if someone's acting self-important. I've heard it muttered at family poker games, whispered at church potlucks, even shouted at a family reunion softball game when my cousin argued with the ump. It's not just a joke anymore, it's a check on ego. When Katie and I got older, we used to wonder if Grandpa secretly respected her for it. He never admitted it. Of course. He took that stubborn silence to his grave. But here's the thing. He never tried that "long hair is for girls" line again. Not once. For a man who prided himself on repeating the same lectures year after year, that was as close to an admission of defeat as you'd get. Grandma lived long enough to see Katie's kids growing up, and before she passed, she told us, he never won another argument after that. Katie broke him. She said it with a proud little smile, like she'd been rooting for Katie the whole time. And maybe she had. Now it's 2025, and I've got my own kids too. They've heard the story dozens of times, always told with dramatic flair. And they love it. My son, Max, who's 9, recently asked me, "So if Grandpa was a baby, does that make Aunt Katie the grown-up?" I said, "Exactly." She was 5, going on 50. What I didn't expect is how the story has become a kind of lesson. Not just funny family trivia, but something we actually pass down with intention. When one of our kids gets teased or someone tries to put them down, we tell them about the breakfast table, how words can cut just as deep as fists, and how even the smallest person can turn the tables with the right comeback. The baby burn has outlived Grandpa. It's outlived that whole generation. Really. It became bigger than him, bigger than his insults, bigger than his stubborn pride. What was once just a cranky old man picking on a hippie son-in-law is now this shining example of how quick wit can topple a bully. And honestly, I think that's beautiful. Because if you strip away all the noise, the message is simple. You don't have to be the loudest voice at the table to win. Sometimes, you just have to be the smartest, or in this case, the sassiest 5-year-old with a bowl of oatmeal. At our last family reunion, Ethan made a speech before dinner. He raised his glass and said, "Here's to Aunt Katie, the original baby slayer." The whole tent erupted in laughter. Even Katie was red-faced, shaking her head. And then he added, "May we all learn to stand up for ourselves, and may none of us ever get babied." We clinked glasses, and I thought to myself, Grandpa probably would have hated that moment. But that's okay, because the truth is, the legacy isn't his anymore. It belongs to Katie, and to every kid who grows up knowing they don't have to take crap from anyone. Not even a grown man twice their size. So yeah, that's the final chapter. My sister Katie, age 5, destroyed our grandpa in one sentence. And decades later, the fire's still burning. What started as one breakfast insult has turned into a family motto, a generational inside joke, and a life lesson rolled into one. And if you ever find yourself across the table from a smug relative trying to tear you down, remember Katie's wisdom. Look them dead in the eye, smile sweetly, and say, "Well, you're bald, so that makes you a baby. Trust me, it works every time."